First week of the Central District is in the books, and with 8 district games and 1 non-district game, but a conference game for these two teams, it is a full week of basketball going on here in the Central District. Let's go ahead and start this with one of the more intriguing games, I'll say, in the Wabash Valley Shawnee game. So, like I said, this is going to be one of the more interesting games because Coach McGee started his first Central District game with an upset to some with a 55-51 win over Shawnee. Lucas Henderson was 4 of 6 from 3 and had a game-high 19 points for the Warriors, while Kaleem Taylor scored 12 points and 7 rebounds, while Julian McGowan had 12, going 7 of 7 from the free throw line and pulling down 12 boards as well. Shawnee was led by Osiris Marr with 15 points, 8 rebounds off the bench, and Ladricus Pittman, who scored 10 of his 13 points in the second half. Johnny Anderson had 12 rebounds and was 4 of 7 from the field, finishing with 9 before fouling out in the loss for the Saints of Shawnee. And again, congratulations to Coach McGee on picking up his first district win in his first district game. It is one of many, I believe, after a rocky start and only 4 wins. After a rocky start and with only 4 wins to 7 losses in the pre-district play, the defending NJCAA champions John A. Logan put themselves together in an impressive 83-69 win over SWIC at Belleville. Elliot Landis led the Volunteers with 19 points and grabbing 8 rebounds, while R.J. Walker scored 14 points and Caden Hawkins drilled 3 trays and scored 13. Saxon Hopkeeper and Bennett Bryles led the Blue Storm with 23 points each. Hokeeper pulled down a game-high 10 rebounds for the Blue Storm. Unfortunately for Coach Harrington, his team suffers the first loss on their home floor. This game was really interesting as we see Olney Central take on Lincoln Trail, as this game was a back-and-forth game for the first half, and Olney Central only led by 4 going into the break. But the trio of J.T. Thomas, Delshawn Sims, and Jacoby Thompson were too much for the Statesmen as they finished with 9, 15, and 13 respectively. No Statesmen were in double figures, with only Ollie Alford and Devin Bell had 9 each. As a team, the Statesmen only shot 30% from the floor and 29% from behind the arc. Olney Central shot at a tad bit better, going 48% from the floor and 40% from 3, and it showed with the Blue Knights pulling away and protecting home floor in the second half with a final score of 79-58. Going into this ball game between Kaskaskia and Lakeland, I thought it was going to be a very good game. It was going to be very even, and it was going to be very intriguing because both these teams like to run up and down the floor. In a sense, I was proven right because this game came down to the final 2.9 seconds, with Lakeland getting the 79-77 win. And it was off of a foul, like I said, with 2.9 seconds left to game. Aaron Davis led the way with 20 points, and Sean Dikovic added 15 and 5 rebounds off the bench for the Lakers. For the Blue Devils of Kaskaskia, Isaiah Tobler led the way with going 8 of 17, while Kamari Slaughter was 9 for 20, and Lionel Hodges went 8 of 15 for a total of 21, 19, and 18 points. All those were for the starters for Kaskaskia, and they only had 8 points coming off their bench. And I'm going to say this now, it applies to the Wabash Shawnee game, it applies to the SWIC Logan game, and it applies for every other game that I have covered and will cover on this podcast. If you don't have bench scoring, you're not going to win many games in this district. It's just been a proven fact. It's how it's been for a very long time. And with Kaskaskia only having 8 points off the bench, I'm surprised they didn't lose this game by a little bit more, but it was a poor shooting performance by Lakeland that kept the Blue Devils in this ball game. Both teams are going to need to clean it up if they want to make a run to Hutch and dethrone either Vincennes or Logan. And you know what? Let's go ahead and stay with the Blue Devils of Kaskaskia, as they were able to avenge their loss against Lakeland with a home win against number 24 Olney Central on Saturday, 90-84. In a way, this game was between two players carrying their teams on their backs. Damian Walkup for Olney, Kamari Slaughter for Kaskaskia. Walkup finished with going 10 of 22, 5 of 11 from 3, and 6 of 7 from the foul stripe for a total of 31 points. Slaughter, on the other hand, went 14 of 25, 0 for 2 from 3, and 7-11 from the foul line for a total of 35 points. Looking at the scoring sheet, it is a mirror image from there, as Olney Central had 3 other players in double figures with Sims, Thomas, and Darian Lewis having 11, 16, and 11, while Vassar was the other Blue Devil in double figures, and he had 22. The other starter on the team only had 2 points for each side. The bench for both teams had the Blue Knights with 2 players for a total of 13 points, and I just said it, that bench play is going to have to help you win games, especially on the road in this district, and Olney was only able to put up 13 points on the bench. Kaskaskia didn't do much better, though, because they only put up 15 points on the bench. Again, like I said, it was between Kamari Slaughter and Damian Walkup because everything else kind of mirrored each other. Kaskaskia was above 53% from the floor, while Olney Central was 46% from the floor, going 32% from 3 and 30% for the Blue Devils. Again, this was an intriguing game for sure, and this week, and with this being only week 1, I can only imagine what this is going to look like later on in the year when Kaskaskia has to head to Olney Central and play that game in the dungeon. Well, it looks like Coach Harrington was able to rally his troops together and creep over for the 500 mark for the second time of the year with a come-behind 74-73 win at Lincoln Trail after the Statesmen took a 10-point advantage going into the break. Nazar Leonard topped the Blue Storm with 19 points. Saxon Hokeeper scored 17, while Dallas Rufus netted 15. Shea Olulier led the way for Lincoln Trail in all scores with 21 points. Caden Hindelacher and Marion Bennett each had 12 points. All that I just said was from Dave Hunter. There were no stats for me to dissect other than that. So again, thank you to Dave Hunter for this tidbit of information, and he might be on the podcast sooner rather than later. Last week, I admit I was wrong because I said Logan was going to run away with this ball game no matter if they won or lost to SWIC. And I was proud to be proven wrong by Wabash Valley. It showed that they have the grit. As Coach McGee almost started his coaching career in district play for Wabash Valley 2-0. However, they just fell a bit short to the host Logan, falling 60-57. Logan had 3 starters in double figures, with Londas leading the way with 14, and Isaac James and Caden Hawkins finished with 12 points apiece. The Warriors held the Vols to a 37.7% shooting from the night on the floor and 15.8 from behind the arc, and took Alfred Worrell, who had only made 1 basket in that game, and he finished with 7 points. The Vols bench only had 10 points combined. On the flip side, for Wabash Valley, McGowan finished going 7-9 from the field, leading all starters with 14 points. Brandon Razor Moore went 7 of 16 from the field and finished with a game high of 16, as again Wabash Valley was just unable to pull out the win at Logan. I thought going into this ballgame this was going to be the most interesting because both of these coaches respect the heck out of each other. And again, for the most part, I was proven right, as Vincennes started off slow and only led by 2 in Ulen as they played against the host Shawnee Saints. Demarion Yates and LeBron Thomas led the way for the Trailblazers, with the latter going a perfect 14 of 14 from the foul line. Yates finished with 18, going 6 of 12 from the field, and Michael Osei-Bonsu went 6 of 8 from the field, grabbing 13 rebounds, 10 of them defensive rebounds, and finished with 17. The Saints were led by Pittman, who finished with 14 and was the only starter in double figures. He went 4 of 10 from the field. Trayvon Thomas finished with 10 off the bench for the Saints, as they haven't found their shooting stroke just quite yet, finishing 36.5% from the floor and 21.4% from behind the arc. Anderson did finish with 13 rebounds, however, going against Michael Osei-Bonsu for the Saints, and he finished with 7 points again in the loss. I think for Shawnee, they're going to have to get Anderson to score more points. He's able to get the rebounds down for you guys. You just got to find a way to feed him the rock and obviously shoot better from the floor. Again, this game is going to be very interesting as it's an early game for both teams. Both teams respect each other, and this game is going to be played in Vincennes later on in the year. So those were the 8 district games that were played over the week. But let's go ahead and touch on the one conference game with Lakeland versus Rend Lake. Again, this is not a district game as Rend Lake is Division II, but it is a GRAC game, so it affects the GRAC standings and not the district standings. Lakeland pulls out a 92-82 win over the Warriors of Rend Lake. Aaron Davis went off. He finished 7 of 13 from the field, 12 of 14 from the free throw line, had 6 rebounds and 10 assists, all while having 4 points and 4 fouls, and had 27 points. Samuel Hincapie finished 5 of 7 from the field and had 4 rebounds, and he finished with 11 points, while Ahmad Roberts finished 4 of 7 from the field, 3 of 4 from the foul line, and had 12 points for the Lakeland Lakers. Again, not going to affect district standings. It is only going to affect how the GRAC plays. And again, in NJCAA, it is the district that is more important than the conference. This is going to be a quick preview as there is only one team in action as we get ready to start the semester break, and that is going to be the Vincennes Trailblazers facing against Southwest Tennessee. That game is going to be played on the 20th of December before going on their break, and they will resume play January 6th with everybody else. Vincennes, again, is the only team that plays. Everybody else is off after Saturday, and they will get to enjoy their holiday break. With that being said, I am going to go ahead and kick it to my surprise interview with not an NJCAA coach, but a Division I assistant coach. Well, welcome back to this episode of the podcast. And like I said, I had a special surprise for everybody coming in. This set of interview is not going to be your traditional coach's interview. Well, it is, but it's not a coach from the district. This person I'm interviewing, his name is Kristof Kendrick. He used to be the assistant coach for Southern Illinois Edwardsville last year. Before that, he was the coach at Western Michigan University, his alma mater. And before that, he was director of player development and video operations at Bradley University. So without further ado, Coach Kristof Kendrick. Coach, thank you so much for joining me.
Justin, thanks for having me on, man. It's a pleasure to be on here and talk some JUCO ball.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting into the really nitty-gritty part as for the people who follow Division I basketball, we'll be talking district play, which is probably the same as conference play going forward. Right. But so the district just finished up their first week of scheduling, and the defending national champions that you saw a lot of while you were at SIU-E, John A. Logan, they come out with a impressive first game against SWIC, and then a more challenging game against Wabash Valley. Last year, like I said, the defending national champions ran off 31 games. What did you really see from them last year going into the district as you got to travel around?
Well, they were uber talented last year. I probably saw them play more than any other team, certainly in the country, but probably more than any other high school, any other JUCO other than my own team. They had a little bit of everything. You talk about Kamari Peterson. You look at the year he's having at East Tennessee State. Obviously, Kurt Lewis went to Missouri. James Dent, last I checked, was averaging about 16, 17 a game at Western Illinois. And I mean, I'm leaving people out. Isaiah Stafford was at Valpo having a great year. KJ DeBrick. I mean, it was just a loaded roster. And Coach Smith-Peters did a great job putting that group together. And it's no surprise they ended up doing as well as they did.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, while I was following it, not doing the podcast last year, they were really stacked. Another team that was really up there in terms of getting back to their traditional ways was the runner up in that district, which was Vincennes University. Again, they had one game against SWIC, which they won, or excuse me, against Shawnee, which they won. But how you told me that you scouted a couple of guys over there. What was the PE complex that you were able to see? What was that atmosphere like?
Oh man, it was tremendous. And I actually went over there to Vincennes during one of the shootouts in October
Oh, the
when they
jamboree.
had
Yes,
yeah, the
yes, yes.
jamborees, yeah. And so it was obviously a lot of talent, a lot of courts going at once, and you get your schedule, you fill it out, and there's every game you're seeing. Every single hour you get to see somebody good, somebody that's good enough to play for you, somebody that's good enough to play above you, and I think that is a tremendous for Ohio Valley Conference schools up to Mid American Conference. There's a tremendous amount, a lot of talent to take a look at that you can evaluate and go see, and hungry kids that want to play basketball, kids that want to be part of a program, and maybe show whatever reason they're in junior college, they want to show that they belong at that next level of NCAA Division One, and you see the success they have. And last year at SIU-E, we had a couple of junior college kids that had a lot of success. A lot of schools can point to the same thing. It's a very underrated pipeline to Division One to the average fan.
Yeah, and that's what I've really noticed when I was there at Vincennes and watching some of these other players play. I kept thinking to myself, man, why aren't they in Division One? And it's obviously a number of different factors. Most of it's academic, and we talked about your college coaching career. You also coached here in the state of Indiana, where you had stops at Warren Central, TC Howe, and Cathedral and Tech. So, I mean, what does the JUCO route for those types of kids that don't necessarily get the grades, but they don't want to go NAIA and burn that type of eligibility and possibly get higher looks elsewhere? Or do you think the NAIA is the way to go for them?
Great question. So I think each kid is different. Each situation each kid is different. There's a kid named Ben Hummerkaus. I said that name wrong. I should know better. I recruited him last year. He's from Tipton High School. He kind of blew up as a senior. He's 6'10 now. He went to Huntington NAIA, developed it there, playing in the Crossroads League, which is the best NAIA conference in the country. And now he's averaging 18 in the Missouri Valley for Evansville. So that would be one example of that. But then you have so many kids. Ben was a 4.0 student, wanted to stay close to home, and so he chose that Huntington option. You have other kids, it's maybe good for them to get away from home. Indiana does not have many junior colleges, Vincennes being the main one, and Sill is the other. But Vincennes is the main one in Division One, right? So for the Indianapolis area, for our kids to get out to Kansas, Illinois, even playing those kind of leagues, Texas, it does a great deal for them because they can focus on their academics and focus on basketball.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Indiana only has two junior colleges to speak of when it comes to basketball, and Scylla up there in Marion, and of course Vincennes. Yeah, I've noticed that too. And for me, there's been a couple of players that just they have the like you mentioned with the kid from Huntington, he had the grades but decided to go stay close to home. We had that a couple of different times, and the reason why I'm starting this really is because to give that outside look, because most people don't think of junior college, they think Division 1 or Division 2 where you're nobody.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
really, with junior college basketball, there's a lot of NBA players out there now that started their career in junior college. You look at, of course, probably the most famous one. He just was inducted into the Hall of Ring of Champions or whatever you call it there in Phoenix. Shawn Marion. And
Vincennes, baby.
you have Carl Landry too. Vincennes wise, you have Jay Scrub, I believe it is, from Logan, that's working his way up the G League. You have a kid named Michael Mulder that's in the Memphis G League now. And of course, you have a couple of undrafted players and Chris Duarte. That was one name that he started at Northwest Florida State before he even got a chance to play. So, what's kind of that when you look at those types of names? What does it mean for the sport of junior college and the sport of basketball in general?
Well, and then another one, a kid to look at would be Craig Porter Jr. from Terre Haute. He
Oh
went to
yeah, yeah.
Vincennes, and he's killing it for the Cleveland Cavaliers now too. I don't even remember him playing AAU ball in Indiana. What it is, just there's so many good players in the United States of America, around the world. But as we keep it, specifically to maybe this area, let's just say the United States, kids are going to get overlooked, and kids develop at different levels, different times. Some kids are fully grown at 15 years old, others 18, others 21. Then there's other factors. What's the home life like? How dedicated are you to playing the sport? How dedicated are you to your schoolwork? All this kind of stuff comes into play. The light doesn't come on for some kids till they're older, and that's okay. And so I think at the end of the day, there's like an old saying. It says, it's not the destination, it's the journey. Everyone's journey is different to get to where they want to get to. And you have guys that are one and dones that go to the NBA. You have guys that develop at a 4-year school. And maybe you have guys that develop it in junior college and then go to a 4-year school that make it to the NBA. So I think, you look at Kamari Peterson. Here's a kid who kind of got overlooked. COVID happened. He goes to Indiana State. Last minute, they got a scholarship open. They take him. Whatever reason, it wasn't a great fit for either side. Okay, cool. So Kamari goes to John A. Logan. Coach Smith-Peters believes in the kid, develops him, keeps it going, and now the kid he might be player of the year in this conference at East Tennessee State. Tremendous talent from Gary, Indiana. And there's a lot of stories like that. And so I think, in essence, what you're saying, Justin, and what I guess kind of what I'm feeding back with is everyone's journey is different, and that junior college route is a terrific, terrific way for a lot of people to be able to accomplish their goals.
And you mentioned Kamari Peterson again, one of those players that led the way for the Vols coming into this season for them. They're struggling a little bit, but you've probably, since you recruited a lot of players from Logan, got to talk to Coach Peterson and his coaching staff. I know the elder brother, Coach Smith Peters, and Kyle, he liked to have the most competition available. And what was Tyler like? Because I've only spoken to Tyler in a couple of different senses and here and there, but didn't really get to sit down and talk to him when I was there.
Well, it's kind of like that old saying, iron sharpens iron. So if you have high level competition and practice every day, that should carry over into the games. And John A. Logan had no problems with that. There's another kid that starts for Wisconsin Green Bay now who I left out that came off the bench for them. And he's starting at a Division I school right now. So they had 8 or 9 guys every day that could really play. And so those practices were intense. Kids were getting after it. Playing time was on the line. That's rare to see even in Division I these days, but especially in junior college. So he did a tremendous job putting a team together, getting guys to buy in and accept their roles.
And we talk about, Central District, District 16. What other schools were you able to see in the junior college route? Did you go to the Chicagoland area? Did you go to Kansas besides the national tournament, or did you go where kind of did you recruit mostly?
Being at SIU-E, I recruited a lot more JUCO than I did at Western Michigan. The location in that St. Louis area is perfect because you're kind of within a 3-4 hour drive of everything. So, Mineral area, I check them out a lot. Triton up in Chicago, we watch them. SWIC, Vincennes, Wabash Valley, all these places had guys to speak of. But then we'd also make sure we kept tabs down in the Texas leagues like Plano, South Plains. We had a kid, Ethan Yancey, who was out in Kansas last year. It's my goodness, I can't even tell you the name of the school. It's out in Division I, almost like out in Colorado, very remote. And Ethan plays for SIU-E now. But so you have to have a good grasp of all that. We would even tap into California JUCOs. We almost took a kid from one of the schools out there. He ended up going somewhere else. But I think the point would be there's so many good players in the United States that you have to keep track of JUCO because there's a lot of guys that are game ready for Division I basketball after 2 years experience, playing at a high level at a Moberly, at a Mineral area, at a Vincennes, at a John Logan, at a South Plains. Those are high level programs that play high level competition. So it does help you in your evaluation knowing that these kids are getting coached and they're playing against good players every day as well.
Yeah, and like I said, you mentioned Triton. I believe they were a tournament team last year. If not, they just missed out. That was a weird tournament selection. I mean, you had Vincennes being the last team in that they were the 24th team. Now they were ranked seed wise 15th, but in the selection Sunday they were the last team announced. But then you have Mineral Area, who's always tough. You have Three Rivers, and it's like I talked about this last week. You have all these teams that just constantly fight each other. And I like to say, going to Vincennes and being here, and maybe you can kind of correct me if I'm wrong here, but I always thought that we got over the Midwest part of JUCO got overlooked because you have Florida and you have Texas, and then of course you have California, Kansas notwithstanding, because they host a great tournament there. But everywhere else in the Midwest, I think we get overlooked, and that's why I really wanted to start this podcast. And you mentioned Triton, they have another good team over there in that district, besides Kankakee. And I'm trying to look them up here. Highland's another good one over there. And that game last year, I don't know if you caught the replay of it. Highland Triton for the district champion, or the regional district there.
The regional district,
yeah. That game was crazy. That went into like double overtime.
I think the winner played Moberly, right?
Yes.
Highland, because I went to the Moberly game afterwards at Highland. Yeah, absolutely. I remember driving through a snowstorm into that. Absolutely.
I mean,
yeah.
So I always call like Central District kind of more like the Big Ten type situation. I don't know.
Sure.
You don't really have a bad team, especially now that they've dropped Lewis and Clark and Southeastern Illinois. Now it's a 9-team league with, I think the worst team is Logan. I mean, but I've always called them the Big Ten of JUCO.
Well, Justin, that's a good point because, and again, it's kind of like, what are you raised with? What's your background with it? And for me, I always kind of, when we talk about JUCO, I always thought of Jayhawk League. I always think of Texas, Florida, like you said. It always seemed like the majority of the really good players of the teams that win the national championship came from those areas. But now that you have John Logan win it, you have Vincennes, who's always good. It's like they were the one exception, right? The Midwest is really starting to show that it's got some guys too, and they're keeping a lot of kids. A lot of times kids from Indiana that would go the JUCO route, they would just go down to Florida or go down to Texas. I had a high school teammate who was a top 100 player who went down to Paris, down to Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's just – and he could have gone to Vincennes. He could have gone somewhere in Illinois, but he decided to go that route. And I think that was more in that's early 2000s too. But I think, again, perception sometimes can be passed off as a reality. And growing up in my era, and certainly, what the people say and the perception is that you want to be in Texas or Florida. But let's just call it what it is. College coaches are coming in droves and to watch the Vincennes, the John Logans, this Illinois-ish, this Indiana area of junior college basketball has really flourished the last 10, 15 years.
And I think that's a lot of that has to do with, like we mentioned, Coach Smith-Peters, Tyler Smith-Peters, and Kyle Smith-Peters. Both of them really put Logan back onto the map. Coach Glash down there in Olney, and Coach Harrington over there in SWIC. I'm going to miss a couple of others, but of course, then you got Hall of Fame. Coach Harrington's a Hall of Famer. Coach Franklin's a Hall of Famer. He just picked up win number 700 against Sauk Valley over a couple weeks ago. So just talking, and I was surprised because I was watching the Purdue Arizona game the other day, and Painter only has 400 wins, and then you look over at somebody like Franklin, he has 700 wins in his coaching career. That's just phenomenal, I think. Might be JUCO and a little bit less competition wise, but 700 wins is hard to do. 300 is hard to do, and we just had Coach Sparks on a couple of weeks ago.
No, I agree with you. And it's all relative, right? So, coach winning 700 games at Vincennes against junior college competition is no different than, Coach Painter winning 400 games against Big Ten competition, in the sense that Purdue has the resources to fight Illinois, Indiana, Michigan State, and Vincennes has those same resources to fight John Logan, SWIC, Wabash Valley, whoever it may be. So, it's kind of that trade-off where it's still just as impressive. And college coaches know that, and people that know basketball know that. It's not easy. And I would even argue maybe at the junior college level where it's a 2-year turnover now, the way things are in Division One, this can be said the same. But in a traditional sense, at a 2-year college, your roster's completely different almost every year. So to have that type of consistency and maintain that high level of basketball, I think is tremendous. And that's why, even though we talked about earlier, Texas, Florida, getting all the attention, Jayhawk getting all the attention, Vincennes was always named with those schools, and going back to the 90s and before. So I think that speaks volumes in and of itself.
And so the next thing, I've talked to Coach Brian Davis, and we talked about how he was able to recruit during the COVID pandemic area. You were up there in the college ranks with Bradley at that point, or just switching over to Western Michigan. What was that like, not being able to really go the more traditional route? I mean, we saw Vincennes kind of take a hit with a 12-17 record a couple years later, but what was that kind of like from the college coaching, the 4-year program perspective of not being able to go down to those games and recruit?
So now you're looking at streaming everything, okay? So you're buying packages for AAU weekends. You're buying packages to watch high school basketball games. You're buying packages to watch junior college games. So now you're looking at it strictly on video. Can you tell if a kid's good enough on video? Yeah, 90% of the time you can. But when you're offering a kid a scholarship at, let's just say, Western Michigan, that's out of state, $30,000 a year. You're giving a kid $120,000 of a free education, and your job and your livelihood depends on it, right? So you would love to see the young man play in person. You'd love to meet him in person. It got to the point in some schools, and it would vary depending on the state, the school, you couldn't even have visits. And if you did, you had to, be socially distanced 6 feet away. So you never could really get that real camaraderie that was kind of like known, or should I say, generally speaking, the norm. So that would make it tough. But I also think that a lot of kids got looked over, and maybe some kids that maybe shouldn't have gone to a Big Ten school did and ended up transferring back down, or vice versa. So I think it really reset everything. And with everyone having this COVID year, I think next year will be the last year that should stop affecting stuff. Maybe we'll see some normalcy come back to college sports a little bit, but it certainly was a lot different when you're not having those in-person evaluations or those in-person recruiting visits to talk with kids and families about your university.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Coach Davis said. It was hard for them, especially like you mentioned, they have a 2-year turnaround. I can only imagine what it was for him to try to get people, both him and Coach Franklin. And then you have a rotating third assistant come in there. You had Glash
Right.
1 year, and now you have another assistant in his first year as the assistant coach there. When I was there, we had 3 coaches. We had Andre Wilson, we had Brian Davis, and we had, of course, Coach Franklin. But so I think finding that stability now is going to be probably a little bit easier, especially that we're going into Hutch so often now.
Right. No, I would agree with that completely. There's no question.
So let's go ahead and kind of second to last question here regarding the national tournament. I mean, I tell people in the streets that when I watch college basketball, I watch, of course, the Purdue's, the Michigan States. I watch March Madness, but there's one tournament that I always am looking forward to, and maybe it was because I was involved in it for 2 years, but that week in Hutchinson, you have 23 games in 7 days. What is that for like a basketball fan, just to see if you've been able to go down into Hutch and feel that atmosphere?
If you're a basketball junkie, you got to do it. You got to do it if you're a basketball junkie. So many games, so many talented players, back to back to back. You got that great facility right there. It's Hutch is like, you say Hutch, you know what I'm talking about. It's the JUCO national tournament. So it's got to that point where it's got that kind of like swag about it, if you will, or no name about it. Just say Hutch. Last year, I unfortunately wasn't able to go. Terrence McGee, who was on our staff, went. He's a great coach. He's actually the head coach at Wabash Valley now. And he played JUCO himself, played at Missouri State. So for him, it was a good chance to go out and see some kids that one we had already seen, or maybe that I had seen and he's followed up on, and then get some new names, because there's so many kids that came in there didn't have offers, or maybe had one or two offers leave with 10 to 15 offers. And if you're just a basketball fan and you want to see good basketball and you see maybe some kids that'll be playing in the NCAA tournament the next year, Hutch is a great place to go.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of what I gotten out of it too. I mean, it's not like of course, the big dance where you have uh, all over the place. You have one centralized location. You start at like 10 a.m. or something like that, and you go to 9 p.m. I mean, you got, for the first 2 days, it is absolute pandemonium, and you don't have a
Yeah.
rest. And that kind of brings me to the last question here. In one of the videos that I made was showing that national championship game that Vincennes was in, and I could do it for Logan too if I had the footage. And a lot of people go, "Why isn't this team Division I or something like that?" And then I always get the comments of, "Well, they're nobody school from a nowhere town," and but what does that really mean when you got uh those mid majors like Bradley or SIU-E that focus solely on getting those JUCO guys into the dance?
Justin, I think that, when people say that, that's just, it's a 2-year school. So that's why it's not Division I, right? It's community college is what it's supposed to be. It's to help young people move on to a 4-year school or get an associate's degree to go to a profession. So looking at that from a basketball standpoint, that's what we're looking for, right? So a lot of times in a situation maybe like a Bradley, where it's a very established high-level Missouri Valley Conference program, you're looking to fill you're going to have a good team return, and say you return 3 or 4 starters. Maybe you need some perimeter shooting. Maybe you need a big guy that can bang. You're looking to maybe fill a gap. You're going to do much better if you have a kid that's played 2 years of JUCO than if you go take a incoming freshman that was playing high school basketball the year before. So I think that's what I would say to people is that, 95% of the time, maybe 100% of the time, when a SIU-E or a Western Michigan or somebody is recruiting a junior college kid, they're expected to come in and have an instant impact. And that's more so a tribute to the level of respect Division I coaches have for junior college coaches and kids, because they've been developed to that point. And you want to win now. You need to win now, the way things are. And so junior college, I think, has been somewhat overlooked because of the rise of the 5th-year prep, NAI getting better, the transfer portal, right? But it's still solid right there. And it's probably stronger than ever in terms of being able to find guys that can help you at the mid-major and low-major Division I level. There's still as high major players in there, no question about it. But when we talk about mid-major, low-major basketball, these kids are coming in right away, making an impact and helping teams get to the big dance.
Well, Coach Kendrick, I appreciate you sitting down with me and talking. It's always nice to get that outside perspective. Like I said, I've talked to Coach Davis, I've talked to Coach Sparks. Now being able to sit down with you, who's not really been involved in it, but been involved in the recruiting aspects of it, it's nice to see what that was like for you.
Justin, I really appreciate it, man. I enjoyed talking with you tonight, and I hope to see you around soon doing the game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And yes, Jerry, that is a quarter in the absolutely sure. But that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. Like I said, Coach Kendrick, he is awesome, and I am hoping to have Coach McGee and one of your other assistants in Olney Central have him on very, very
Absolutely. Absolutely. You got it, man. Thanks again, Justin. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Coach.